President of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. You know, I've always heard, like many of you have probably heard, that you're not a real pilot until you've flown a tailwheel airplane, like this beautiful Waco, which is our AOPA sweepstakes airplane. Notice how the third wheel is on the tail rather than up on the nose. Like these require special techniques and just good basic airmanship for safe flying. And that's why the FAA now requires a separate endorsement in your logbook for flying these. But as a newly minted real pilot, as you probably found out in the January issue of Pilot magazine, now qualified to fly these kind of airplanes, I can tell you truly that flying a tail dragger is an incredible experience. Especially in tail draggers, grass runways are wonderful. I did most of my baking for initial tailwheel training on the grass. But grass or pavement, takeoff is different. For one thing, you keep the stick back in the first part of the takeoff run to keep the tail planted on the ground. And then you push it forward to level the airplane once you've gained some speed and have rudder control. Now, my instructor, Dave Schroeder, kept urging me to come more forward with the stick to raise the tail. But I thought for sure I would plant the nose and prop right onto the runway. And dancing feet, always those dancing feet to keep the tail from swinging and weather vaning. If nothing else, my checkout in AOPA's tailwheel membership sweepstakes airplane taught me what rudders are really for. It's enough of a challenge when the wind is calm, but any crosswind tends to act on the tail much more so than in a nose wheel airplane. Once in flight, there isn't a whole lot of difference between a nose wheel and tail wheel airplane, except maybe that tail wheels seem to fly just a little bit better, or so it seems. Landing a tail dragger is different too, as you might imagine. In the Waco, I learned all over again how to use the horizon for basic VFR flying, and looking not only ahead, but also off my left and right shoulder to understand the angle of attack of the wing. Tail wheel flying is a back to basics, fun sort of flying. Tailwheel landings come in two basic flavors. The first, favored by many instructors, is the full stall landing, sometimes called the three-point, because all three wheels should touch at the same time. The other is the wheel landing, touching in a more level attitude with some power, then pushing the stick forward to stay on the landing. After landing a tricycle gear airplane, you've probably found yourself releasing yoke pressure. You're on the ground, you're alive, the passengers are alive, and without damaging the airplane, why not relax, right? Well, I quickly found out that in tail wheel flying, you can never, ever relax. Actually, you shouldn't in nose wheel airplanes either. My first bad habit, which plagued me while learning the fine art of full stall landings in my Waco experience, was relaxing back pressure on the stick after landing. This, of course, moves weight from the tail wheel, increasing the chance of losing directional control on rollout. But wheel landings, the ones with a more level attitude on landing, are another animal altogether. Roy Redman, the owner of Rare Aircraft, explained how wheel landings are good for strong, gusty winds that weren't too far off runway center line, or in cases where you need a longer final requiring power. These were pretty easy for me, much like the approach in a turbojet aircraft or landing a seaplane on glassy water, where you maintain a reference speed during approach. But the hardest part, again, was getting used to pushing the stick when all of us landing tricycle gear airplanes flare with the yoke coming back. On day 4 of my checkout, Roy decided that I needed work on dancing with those rudder pedals. His one takeoff demonstration of footwork was just what I needed. Being a passenger for a moment, I wasn't comfortable at all with his rudder pedal work. That was my problem. I was trying who made such small, indecisive rudder pedal movements that my passenger wouldn't notice. It was instantly apparent that you don't trade passenger comfort for the wild runway excursions that result from recognizing drift too late. The one other sticking point in my training was remembering to keep the stick or yoke all the way back after lowering the tail on landing. It's part of that old adage about continuing to fly the airplane until it's tied down. Tail wheel flying is different, but it's fun different. The AOPA Centennial of Flight Sweepstakes with the Waco, one of the very few tailwheel planes we've ever given away as part of our ongoing membership sweepstakes, was the perfect opportunity for me to sample the wonderful world of tailwheel flying. So the next time a pilot comes up to me and says, "You're not a real pilot," I'm going to interrupt and tell him, "Hold everything. I am a real pilot. I'm a tail dragger pilot." Prop clear.